don't worry, I'm not going to get into any spoilers for this season of Star Trek Discovery. I will be willing to talk about basically the characters that are introduced in the first episode and a character that's introduced a little bit later that was announced way beforehand. So a couple of minor spoilers, but that's it. I'm not going to delve into the plot, everything that's going on. I'm just going to talk general stuff to give you an idea of how this season was, how it went, and whether it's worth your time. So, even though I didn't talk about the first season of Star Trek Discovery, I thought it was worth talking about this one because it's kind of not great. So, the problem with Star Trek Discovery Season 2 is it's got so many elements that it's trying to balance, so many plot threads that it's trying to deal with, and they all add on to each other, and some of them are completely pointless. But there's just so much to it, which is fine, because what I'm trying to say is there's a very complicated plot, which is not a criticism. That's not a criticism of this show, because I've watched seasons of television that have had a complicated plot and have thoroughly enjoyed them because I was engaged in what was going on. And it's a little bit frustrating when I watch a review of some season. I'll cite Doctor Who Series 6 as one, and then people will complain that the plot was complicated, and that's a criticism that I didn't understand, but I understand it more now after seeing this, because the problem with this is not that the plot is complicated, but rather that it's complicated without being interesting. So there's all this stuff going on that I really didn't care about. And there's all of these elements of things that are going together, and it's like, oh, how is this going to turn out? And I just sat there the whole time like, I really don't care, because I don't really care about most of these characters. And then when it finally, everything was resolved in the final episode, even though it was a pretty good final episode of the season, it just didn't really work because there's just so many elements that I just didn't care about, and I wasn't able to completely follow because I was just so disinterested in everything that was happening. And in a movie, then it's easier to follow because, it's short, but with a TV show, when it's 14 episodes, and you're sat there the whole time trying to follow everything, but being completely disinterested, it's damn near impossible. And that's what happened to me, is there were lots of things that I just wasn't able to follow because I just really didn't care what was going on. And the reason I didn't care is because mainly I didn't care about these characters. There's so many characters, and they just spend very little time making them interesting or developing them in any way. And I would say that my favorite characters, the ones that are somewhat enjoyable to me, are like Saru and the Pike. Pike was good, and that's about it. I mean, there's characters that are acted really well, like Michael Burnham, but aren't particularly interesting to me, even though they have stuff going on. So, I don't know, this season just, it tried to deal with too much, and it just wasn't able to do that. Also, this season introduces Spock, and I'll remind you, this Star Trek Discovery is set about 10 years before the original Star Trek series, and I just really don't like how they handled Spock. I thought it was poorly handled, and I just don't like what they did with this character, and I didn't appreciate that. And there are some things that they used to clean up the whole season at the end, but overall, just talking about it, I'm getting bored because was so disinterested for this whole season. And honestly, the first season, while better, was not much better. So if you haven't seen Star Trek Discovery and for some reason you decided to click on my review for season 2, my recommendation is don't waste your time with it, because so far it has absolutely failed to be an engaging series and provide interesting characters and plots that you can get interested in and care about. And that's what a TV show needs to do, and it just has failed to do that for me, and I would not recommend you check it out. Overall, the second season of Star Trek Discovery was a little bit more disappointing than the first one. It failed to engage me, it failed to interest me, and while it did have a couple of episodes that were interesting, and it did have some elements that worked, there's so much in it that doesn't, that it really bogs down the stuff that does, and it's just such a complicated plot of stuff that did not interest me, which made me fail to enjoy the series as a whole, the season as a whole, and I just was ultimately quite disappointed by this one. I was hoping that after the last season it would improve, and sadly, it got a little bit worse. So, the second season of Star Trek Discovery did disappoint me, and sadly earns a disappointing rating of 6.5 out of 10. I mean, it wasn't horrible. There was stuff that worked in it. It's just there's so much that just doesn't. It's hard to give this thing a good rating. And ultimately, 6.5 is, you know, it's a somewhat positive rating, but there's some somewhat positive stuff in it, and there's also some stuff that just doesn't work. Yeah, enough about this show. I may or may not talk about the third season if it comes out. If I see it, I have no idea. That's not a question for right now. But if you're interested in any other shows like Black Mirror, I've got reviews out for that. The new season, depending on when this video drops, that I might have all 3 out. I've got reviews out for Veep Season 7, for Good Omens, I've got Game of Thrones reviews, I've got classic Doctor Who reviews, I've got Doctor Who ranking videos. If any of that is of interest to you, then feel free to check it out. But if not, that's totally fine. I just appreciate your time watching here today. And yeah, so that's going to do it for now, folks. I hope to see you soon. Thank you for watching. Take care, and have a lovely week.